Okay, so we're going to put together our little sunflower cupcake wrapper. This is a freebie on the site, and might as well spend a little time here just doing a little bit of inking. I've got a nice green color for the outside, and for the actual petals we've got a yellow. I'm using a pumpkin spice color, which is just a very light orange, and a semi-dark green called Bamboo Leaves. These are both by Memento. Dewdrop, I should say. This is Versamagic, this is Memento. And I've got my Ranger ink applicators here, and I'm just going to go ahead and press on my little ink pad here. And what I usually do is just kind of rub a little bit off, just to make sure that I'm getting the right tone and the right amount. And we're just going to go around and add a little ink to our little petals here, just to kind of make them a little more interesting so they're not just dull. Cool thing about these applicators is you can really get into the crevices, but we can go ahead and get our little applicator in there, just run it along the edge. You'll end up hitting the surface a little bit while you're doing that, and that's all we want. Just want to kind of make these a little more interesting, a little more lifelike, a little more nature-like. And you can add as little or as much ink as you want. I'm actually kind of almost creasing it here like this to help me run it along the edge of these little pieces here. And you can totally just work in one direction if you want, and then flip it around and then work the other direction. Just try to make it a little more interesting. Okay, and the technique we're going to use for the actual sunflowers, the petals for the sunflowers I should say, is going to be a little bit different, but it's still going to be cool. Okay, here we go. So let's put that off to the side, close that up so it doesn't dry out. And we've got our little petals here. Now this, it's going to hide pretty much up to about this point here. You'll see a little bit here. The idea is to kind of create a little gradient effect for the sunflower petals. So I'm going to grab some ink. Now I kind of like the ink pads that are a little dried out because I don't get as much ink, and I kind of like it when it's subtle. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to ink up like this. And don't go all the way. Just kind of stop. You know, you can kind of work in circles too. And stop like halfway, 3/4 up the petal. Don't go all the way. You want to leave that tip, that yellow color. Just kind of, I'm doing circles here, and I will stop, like I said, about 3/4 of the way up the petal. I'm going to work it down to where that green part covers it up. Okay, so as long as you kind of get it halfway down, should be fine. That looks good. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now after I dab my applicator in the ink, I push down with a little bit less pressure. And then as I go, I increase my pressure just to make sure that I'm putting this on fairly evenly. But that's just me. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it however you want. And of course, if you don't want to ink, you don't have to. Totally optional. I'm just kind of filling in half of this long strip here. And we'll show you a side-by-side comparison of the difference in the aesthetic once we're done. So it's subtle, but it is noticeable, and it does make it look more realistic. And so you can see the subtle difference. I think the light in here is kind of washing it out slightly. At least it is on my monitor. But let me just go over this one more time here. Get those edges. Okay. Now you'll see here, when we put these side by side, you see the difference. Okay. And the tips are still kind of yellow, like the original color. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process on this guy here. Just doing circles, because in that way I can get kind of a nice little curve at the top of the petal there, or in the middle of the petal, because it's pretty much as far as we're going. And I'm not going to be afraid to push down a little bit harder in some areas. And you take a look at sunflowers out in nature, they're not always perfect. And then we'll go back in and we'll fill in that strip part, the actual band portion of this thing. Okay. So again, this is optional. You could totally use some pattern paper if you want instead. It's totally up to you. All right, so now I'm just going to run this along the base here. Get that nice and inked. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so next step is to simply put these together. Okay, so you've got 3 pieces here. Okay, and you'll see there's little numbers cut into this. There's a 3 there, a 2 here, and a 1 here. Now what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and train this a little bit so that it has a natural curve to it. Try not to crease it. I've got a 3/8 inch dowel here, and I'm just going to go ahead and train this. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to glue this to itself using that little score mark there. Okay, now, but before we do that, and actually what I want to do, I want my texture to be out. Okay, so I'm actually going to glue it the other way. And in doing so, I just realized that I will probably want to do a little bit of inking on the other side as well. And now this non-texture side, sometimes, depending on the ink, doesn't look as soft. So be careful when you're inking. So when you do the inking, try to be maybe a little more gentle with it. Okay. There we go. I don't really need to hit the leaves too much because I'm not going to be seeing them. We're going to be seeing this part of the leaf. Okay. So what we're going to do, first thing is we're going to curl these up vertically. Okay. Give them a natural curve. You can give them as much or as little curve as you want. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and fold them out. And we're going to take each one and pinch it. Okay, so I'm taking these 2 fingers, putting it under, while I take my pointer finger and push down right at the tip, and then I'm taking these and creasing. Just kind of pinching the tips of the leaves to kind of make them a little more interesting. Okay. It's just a lot easier to work on this pinching portion while this thing is still kind of flat. Okay, so what we're going to do then is wrap this around, and I'm going to put glue. There's a tab here. You don't actually need to fold the tab. Okay, so we're just going to put glue on this tab. and glue it to itself. And you know what? I actually put it on the wrong side. Let me get rid of that. So it's going to be like this. Actually, no, I did have it on the right side. Silly me. Okay. And we're just going to connect the two sides, just making sure that we have everything nice and aligned. And there's quite a bit of resistance here. So you want to hold that in place until it really fully sets, because it will try to kind of fight you a little bit. Okay, but there is the first layer of our cupcake wrapper. Okay, so just really be patient and hold that in place. If you have some, you could probably use some clothespins. If you're making a bunch of these and you don't want to sit here and wait, you throw some clothespins on there. But you can see what we have forming here. And we're going to layer it one more time. Okay, and once you put the cupcake in there, it should hold its shape a lot better. But let's go ahead and repeat that same process here with this guy. So we're going to curl these up. Okay, I'm going to fold them back. And then we're going to go ahead and pinch. Okay, and I'm going to go in and ink the top section of this just to kind of keep things consistent here. You probably want to do that while it's still flat before you pinch and before you bend, but that's okay if you didn't. Go ahead and fill that in a little bit. That looks good. Okay, so again, we're going to be gluing this like so. And you do want to train this piece so that it automatically has like a natural curve to it. And don't worry about the pieces not folding out right now. We can always go in and fluff things up when we're done here. Okay, so we're going to glue that to itself. Just make sure that you get it nice and aligned with the score mark there. Okay, and what we're going to end up doing is putting one inside the other to layer this and give it a nice layered feel. And then we're going to take that guy and put him on the outside to finish this up once we have the rest of this in place. Okay, so just hold that until it sets. Now this one is definitely, that is my number 2. Okay, so the number 2 goes on the outside of number 1. And you want to make sure that you're offsetting these. Okay, so that looks good to me. So what I'll end up doing, just to kind of make this a little more permanent, I'm just going to go ahead and put just a little ring of glue inside there. You don't need a lot. Okay, and pop that in there. Just make sure that your petals are nice and offset so that they're not on top of each other. The idea is to stagger it to make it look more full. Okay, and just kind of squeeze in there. Okay, so there is the petal part of our little cupcake holder here. Okay, and then we've got this piece here. I'm going to go ahead and train this. to get it nice and round. Okay. And again, I want my texture side popping out. So I'm going to train this the opposite way because we're going to curl these. Okay. I'm going to take my 1/4 inch dowel and I'm going to take and wrap this around so that it kind of goes like that. Okay, so just curling these around my dowel, and you can always kind of fluff them up a little bit later too when we're done. If you're having Thanksgiving this year and you want to make some really special cupcakes for dessert, or if you just want to give something to a child, a teacher, be a cool little way to do that. Okay, so you get the idea, and I will probably actually push these down a little bit more. I want you to be able to see them. So we're probably going to fold those as well as curling them. Okay, so you get the idea there. Okay, and then just like we did before, I'm just going to glue this tab to itself, making sure that I get it lined up nicely with the score mark. Now keep in mind here that not all cupcakes are the same size. So what you may want to do is cut out one of these and check it and test it with your cupcake and see if you might need to maybe make it a little bit bigger. I don't know if you'll have to, but you don't want to risk making 20 of these and then finding out that it's too big or too small. It's better if it's bigger, obviously. It'll still look cool, but if it's too small, that might pose a problem for you. So I'm going to go ahead and push these down and just kind of fold them without pressing too hard. I want to kind of maintain a natural little curvy look to it. Okay, and then that is just going to slip right on the bottom of this here. Okay, so that you have that little look there. Okay, and I'm probably going to curl these leaves a little bit more just to kind of pretty them up a little bit. But you can go ahead and put a little ring of glue right along the bottom. Not a lot, you don't need a lot. Just a tiny little bit. And then just slide that on. Okay, just push it down flat. And there you go. She's all ready for your cupcake. And that is it.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.